Okay, what we tried to do was go out and take a look at the entire inventory of the things that we had out on the parks and then try and place them in some categories that would make some logical sense.
Do we know what that buzzing is? Oh, okay, okay.
The voice from the buzz.
Okay. So,
yeah, I think we're okay.
So what we did was go out and take a look at a number of different things and in our inventory and then try and place them into categories so that we could present them for you tonight. The first thing we took a light at was park lighting. And park lighting throughout the city is a challenge, mainly because it's constantly exposed to the elements, and probably that middle slide there on the top of that gooseneck light out there at Shoreline Park, you can just see what the elements have done. Have actually rusted away the entire fixture. So most of the parks need some upgrade in lighting. Additional repairs in addition to these that are up there are needed at Franklin, Jackson, Cruzy, Little John, Lydecker, Lincoln, McKinley, and Woodstock. It's just been a number of years. There have been a number of projects that have been identified over the years that have been placed on the unfunded capital improvement list. Another area that we need to address is park pathways. There's a number of significant projects that we need to do at Cruzy, Lincoln, especially Shoreline. The trees and tree roots have raised a number of pathways. The elements, again, have reduced in some cracks and potholes. The stairway you see there in Washington is decades old and is in need of some work. So there's pathways throughout the city are something that we need to address. Court surfaces, and for these purposes we're using both basketball and tennis. There's a number, everything at Washington, both the tennis and basketball courts need to be done. Lydecker presents some unusual challenges because that is fill. It's really tough to get courts to stay there without cracking because the earth settles and then we get cracking in the courts. The courts at Franklin and McKinley also need some work. We will be addressing some of these with the first round of the WW money, but we will not get to all of them with the WW funding. The pools are probably one of the most critical things that we face in the immediate future. Both Emma Hood and Encinal are more than 40 years old. There are some real significant improvements that we need to do there in the very near future. Pool resurfacing, replacement of the filtration system, locker room renovations are all things that we're going to need to address fairly quickly because we've been able to keep going thanks to the hard work of our maintenance people. We've been able to kind of tape things together and keep things running and be able to pass all of the health inspections, but eventually I think our luck will run out there if we don't start replacing some of these items. The buildings themselves are showing their age. We have issues with flooring. Some of the kitchens are outdated and small, and improvement to these areas would greatly enhance our ability to generate revenue and make them available to the public. Right now, it's kind of tough to do a nice event if you don't have a large catering kitchen or even a sufficient warming kitchen. Fencing we put in there just so you could see the age. Most of them are rested on those ugly chain link fences, but almost every park will need some kind of fence improvements in the near future. The field lighting, one thing I wanted to bring to your attention is these are so old and outdated. If you look at those two photos, if you look at the one on the, well, it'll be my left, you see how all of the different lights are different shapes and different sizes? That's because the original ones aren't available anymore, and we've had to mix and match and buy replacement things. And occasionally you can't even find them. That's why two of those structures are missing light. The park irrigation, what this shows is that photo in the middle is the photo of Godfrey Park before we did the renovation. If you look real close, you can see those sort of circular areas that are brown. That's because the irrigation is inefficient and wasn't covering those. Those clocks that are shown there are actually the first generation of clocks that are probably from the 70s. Now they have much more efficient digital computerized that would result in both water savings and reduction in cost for water. Site furniture, we put this in there so you could get an idea of some of the other items that are out there in the parks: bleachers, drinking fountains, barbecue pits, picnic areas. Those types of things are all showing their age, especially if you note that drinking fountain there that's starting to rust out. The tree replacement. We're very fortunate to have a lot of trees, but they're also nearing their maximum life expectancy and they're starting to fall down. These three were three that we lost this winter One was out at Shoreline, one was in Franklin, and one was in Washington, I believe. So they're all getting near the end, so we need to include some type of a comprehensive tree plan in the master plan.
I just wanted to ask on those trees. We had that survey that was done of every tree in Alameda. Did that include
Street
the parks?
trees, only half. That was all of the street trees.
That did not include
We've
the parks?
had Washington, Lincoln, and I believe one other park. I can't remember off the top of my head. So there's only been a comprehensive inventory of about 3 sites.
Because I mean that tree falling right there, or the part of the tree falling, that's a real hazard. And I would hope with that tree inventory that we did that assessed the health of trees, we would avoid that kind of thing happening.
That's the kind of thing that we need to build into the master plan to do every tree in every park.
Yeah, Councilmember Town.
We have a tree master plan that the public works
for street trees.
Just street trees.
But then I think the council gave direction to expand that, right? Yeah.
I think what you probably are recalling is an email that I called Trees, Trees, and Trees, which was a long one, which basically said, as we discussed that night, that we needed to take this and go on-site to public facilities and property and parks, and that's what we're talking about now. But we started following through with that in terms of evaluating a tree program for the parks, which obviously are different types of trees, most probably than what you'd use on some of your streets. All of a sudden, we started coming up with all these other issues with the parks. I mean, what good does it do to have a master tree plan for parks if, when you do put the trees in, the rest of the facility is less than desirable? Or so we really needed to look at the whole park management and master plan issue in a larger perspective, not just the trees, but also the facilities and the design of the park, and how many basketball courts and where you wanted to place them. But yeah, we did. You did discuss that night when we did the street tree master plan. But going on our own on the tree replacement for the parks without doing this seemed kind of weird, and that's why we're back tonight to talk about it in a more holistic fashion.
I was just thinking the assessment of the health of the trees. Mm-hmm. We should do that regardless of the master planning.
Well, we do that. If we monitor, our staff currently monitors, but if we have one that there's any question, then we'll bring in an arborist and get a report. And
okay, I'm just saying we probably should avoid having large parts of trees fall like that, because it could fall on.
That would be our goal.
Yeah.
That would be our goal.
I guess you look at the 3 trees that went down during the winter.
Well,
and this.
We have some pretty big trees around here, and they can fall on cars and houses and people, and that's what I'm saying. If we keep ahead of it, I think we did that assessment where we had an arborist and people going around and evaluating the health of each street tree. We need to do that with the parks, so that we know if this is likely to happen, and we can take action before that happens.
Because most of our trees are getting near the end of their lifespan, and they're huge. They're just huge.
And we can't just wait for them to fall like that.
No.
Yeah.
And finally, the last slide here are some of the things out at the golf complex, since that is open space. The drainage issue that we began talking about over the last couple of meetings. Some cart path repairs there for those cracked areas. The driving range, which needs to be completely renovated. We also need work in the pro shop, the locker rooms, and an expansion of the restaurant. So that wraps up pretty much the current situation, unless there's any questions.